How did we get from him throwing himself on the ground and just about flipping himself completely over to crossing a bridge? Stick around, Seth is going to show you how. So here we are on day 3 on Halterbreaking, a last call to streak. And it's been about 5 days since his second session. Now, Seth was a little bit concerned because he generally likes to string 3 sessions together in a row and then give them a day off. But, you know, due to weather here in South Dakota, we had to give him a few days off. It got pretty muddy. You can see Seth out there walking around in his muck boots. We lost a few days there to weather, but that's okay. Seth has put a solid foundation on this colt up to this point, and all we had to do is start off from where we left off about 5 days ago. And he's still going to catch him the same way he has been by pushing him into that pen there. And, you know, colt has caught on. He knows the game. And it's going to take just a few minutes to get him back in there. Again, if you guys haven't been following, the 2 other colts that are in this pen, they've already been halter broke. They're already familiar with giving to pressure. They're already familiar with people. This Weanling colt here that Seth is trying to put in behind this panel, he was handled a little bit when he was a weanling, when he was a baby, when he was a tiny baby first week, he was handled a little bit. And after that, he wasn't handled at all. And the only human interaction he had was whenever I came in to feed his mom, groom his mom, or fly spray his mom. So that's the most that he's had to deal with, and now we're starting to ask him to do something. And if you haven't seen the first 2 sessions, I've broke them up into how we caught him and haltered him the first time, and then broke up the 2 halter breaking sessions into 2 other videos. So I will link those in the description box below if you are interested in watching them and how we got to the point we're at now. We start with Seth haltering this colt exactly like he has in the last 2 sessions that he's worked with this colt. This creates simple triggers. We make progress by trigger stacking. Trigger stacking is using the same technique over and over again, building on it to develop a desired response out of a horse. It can be done in riding, breaking and training one, as well as during groundwork, just like we are during the halter breaking process. Seth continues to do all of the behaviors that this colt is used to up to this point. Rubbing his neck, his head, and his approach is the same as before. He's building on his relationship with this colt. And did you see the gelding in the background screwing around? And that's a perfect distraction that gives us the opportunity to test this colt. Because if you remember correctly, and if you didn't see it, I encourage you to go back and look at the first video and see this colt take off out of this pen at a run. Now, when he has distractions like the gelding on the other side running off and playing, that generally makes a horse want to go off and play as well. Seth takes every opportunity to rub this little bay on his head and make friends with him and try to make this a good experience. And Seth set up these lick tubs over here. He has a reason for how they're set up. He starts by asking this colt to move those shoulders around and turn in that circle and follow him around. See how he has his focus and his attention? He's starting to move his feet a little bit quicker, and he's not staying as sticky as he was. He always rewards the colt in a release and petting him on his head when he's done. So then he goes over to the lick tubs, and he uses them as an opportunity to get this colt to move his shoulders even more. It makes for a good test to see how much this colt has retained in the past 2 sessions and how much he's giving to pressure as he bends him around these tubs. Because ultimately today, Seth's goal is to get him out of the pen and walk him down by the tack room and walk him over the bridge. Again, we have a lot of distractions with these 2 other colts in the pen doing whatever they want. This is a testament to the relationship Seth has developed already with this colt and what he expects of him in day 3 of their halter breaking session. Okay, a reoccurring theme here is Seth releases the pressure, and he stops and takes a moment to rub and pet this colt all over his face. He's establishing a level of expectation in how he responds to the colt when the colt does something correctly. He releases the pressure and follows it up with rubbing and petting on him, especially around his face. Now, Seth has to navigate this gate single-handedly, and I know it doesn't seem like that big of a deal or seem like that much, but there are some folks that see this as an obstacle and think that they cannot do this on their own. They think they need somebody to help them with this gate, especially when you have 2 other colts in the pen like we do. But here's the deal. Handling a colt and taking him out for their first time and handling the gate is all part of the learning experience. And the relationship that develops between the handler and the horse is where I see how reasonable the horse will be. As I watch all of this take place, I'm evaluating how reasonable this colt wants to be and how easy he is to get along with. He wants to be pretty user-friendly. He's trying to figure out what Seth wants, and he's trying to figure out what he wants him to do. So he's just kind of going along, asking, okay, what do you want to do next? What do you want me to do next? And that's what I'm looking for in a colt. So I'm really excited to see how well this colt walks off and follows Seth off, leaves his friends, leaves his buddies, leaves his pen, everything that he knows, and he's walking down to the tack room and down this road in a completely strange environment and what he's not used to. Now, there's other ways we could have done this. There's lots of other ways. We could have taken an old saddle horse and ponied this guy off of him and let it kind of be a drag show, you know, where the colt kind of runs out in front and has to get drugged by the saddle horse. You know, we could have done that. We could have walked an old gelding out in front of him and he would have followed the old gelding just fine. We could have used his mama and walked his mama out in front of him and he would have followed his mama just fine. But not everybody has access to an old saddle horse or to an old quiet gelding or to somebody else that would even help them in this situation. So I'm trying to show you guys how Seth gets it done on his own by himself using the only tools he has, which are his techniques. Now, he has a little obstacle course set up for the colt down here by the tack room, and he's going to ask him to walk around and in between all this stuff. Now, I've got the 2 dogs down here with me. Okay, this is Weatherby and Rocky. And they aren't cattle dogs. They're Springer Spaniels and they're bird hunting dogs. So they're not going to heel this colt. They're not going to try to hurt him or anything. And they're not going to be overly active while Seth is working with this colt. But this colt will be dealing with another distraction. It's him. It's a cat. It's 2 dogs. There's another horse tied to the tie rail. Again, he is dealing with distraction. The earlier you can get them handling all the different distractions, the better off they will be. I have never said this before in any other video or any post I've ever made on Facebook, but I would never, ever have a round pen that was an entire covered indoor type round pen where the walls were all the way up and a horse couldn't look out. There's no distractions for horses to deal with. And they're surprised when there are sounds or when they see something either come over the top rail or come underneath the bottom of the round pen. And, you know, it really affects their psyche when they can't see what's going on all around them and they can only hear. And I had an opportunity to work at a place that had a completely enclosed round pen like that for a year. And I will never work with something like that again. I really struggled with horses and dealing with distractions. I find that if they can see everything that's going on around them, they're a heck of a lot better off than they are than when you try to remove all the distractions together. So we've gone over to the bridge now, and Seth is going to sit here and he's going to ask this colt to go over this bridge. Now, I will tell you that this particular part of the video took about another 30 minutes in order for him to work through this. So I'm going to fast forward through all of this so you can still see what Seth worked with and this colt pulling on him. But I want you to see that I'm not cutting anything out, that, you know, it is what it is. you get what you're seeing, and you see this colt's reaction to walking over this bridge, because this is a big, scary deal, asking him to step up on something. It's hollow, it makes a thunking sound. It's a platform, it feels different. He's on grass now, that feels different than the road he just walked on, and then he'll be walking up onto something slippery. So not only will there be a difference in what he feels and his proprioception under his feet, but there is a difference in the sound that it makes, and visually his perception of the ground has changed, and we need to take all of that into consideration. Seth uses all of the same techniques he's used from the first 2 sessions to encourage this colt to step up on the bridge. He doesn't jerk, he doesn't use a flag, no special equipment, just the same patience and focus he has before to get this colt to move his shoulders and his feet by changing the angle of the position of his body. So here I want to point out again that this colt is bred to be a speed horse. His response is going to be reactive, whereas most of the colts that Seth has worked with previously are generally unafraid and uninhibited by things that appear to be scary. Seth told me that this colt took the most time he's ever experienced in halter breaking trying to get him over this bridge. And I expected him to, because of how he's bred. But how he responds once he gets up on the bridge and goes over it was exactly how I expected this colt to behave, given who his sire is. So now I'm going to fast forward here, and we're going to have a few minutes of fast forward video so you can see exactly what Seth does. It's just a lot of standing there, putting pressure on him, asking the colt to take a step. The colt stepping up on the bridge and then stepping back down again. So it gets a little bit boring, but I wanted you guys to be able to see all of it. And then we'll get to the point where this colt finally does climb up on the bridge and stand up on it. Let's pause for a moment of our fast forwarding to appreciate this cat. This is Winnie. She is an 8-year-old barn cat that is desperately seeking Seth's attention, and his focus is so strong on this colt and getting him over the bridge that he is not paying attention to her one bit. A, that's the kind of focus you have to have, and B, those are the kind of distractions that your horse needs to deal with. Oh, look who's back for more attention. When he comes back over again, walks across the bridge. Colt spooks at her slightly, but he stays right there with Seth. You know, you'll see the tension on the rope, and as soon as the colt gives to pressure, Seth releases his pull slightly. There's a little bit of slack in that rope as soon as that colt gives, whether it's walking around the bridge on his own account or he softens in the face a little bit. You know, he's getting to see this bridge from all different angles. And he stepped up on it a couple of times. And, of course, it makes that thunk sound that we talked about. You know, it's going to make a funny sound, and he's going to have to get over that. Meanwhile, he's dealing with all these different distractions. He's got his friends up in the pen far away. He's got a horse tied over by the round pen. He's got the two dogs. He's got me standing here videoing this whole thing. And he's got a cat that wants the handler's attention really bad. Okay, so here we're about to make some huge progress. We get a step on the bridge and then a step over the corner. Now, Seth is choosing to recognize the colt making an effort. We recognize the try. We recognize that he's giving to pressure. And Seth stops what he's asking for and just spends some time petting on the colt before he moves on again. Now, we're going to go back to fast forwarding again until we have some more progress. We get another good step up on the bridge here, and this is where it's critical. See, Seth releases slightly and gives to pressure on this colt. He releases the pressure, and this colt is standing up there, and he just waits. He just keeps his focus and waits for this colt. This is a confidence-building exercise. This is an exercise in trust. This is an exercise in wait, in focus, in patience, and waiting on this colt to make the decision to get up on that bridge on his own, and he comes across on his own. Seth, again, uses this opportunity to stop and pet and release all pressure altogether. This is the bond that he's developed and the relationship that he's developed with this colt, that the colt this has come to expect that this is the release when he does what is expected of him in that moment. And Seth's going to ask him of it again, and he's going to do it over the same exact side that the colt just did. He's trying to repeat and build on that foundation that he's been building on this whole entire time. I can't tell you what the magic number is, how many times you can ask a horse to do something before they either A, start completely resisting, or B, they get burned out by it, or they get it and understand it. Seth, his theory was to work at it until he got the least amount of resistance out of this colt when he was asking him to go up and over. And at this point, he's had enough experience teaching horses how to go over bridge and go over obstacles that he kind of has a pretty good feel for it. And so that's just going to take experience, and you're going to learn on your own kind of, you know, how much it takes before you burn one out and then they just don't want to do it anymore. You definitely do not want to burn one out. You always want to make sure that you release the pressure when they give and when they stop resisting. So here Seth tries to change direction with him and go the opposite direction, go back towards his friends, go back towards the tack room, go back towards the other horses. And I will tell you guys this, I use this direction to my advantage when I'm riding one. I will set them up to go over the bridge, going this specific direction because it's going towards the other horses, towards the corrals, towards where they will be tied up for the day. This colt was a no-go. He wasn't having any of it. He didn't know how to go over the bridge from that direction, and that's okay. We don't make a big deal about it. We put him back in the circumstance, in the situation that he was accustomed to. Remember, we're always building on this foundation. We go back to what he was most comfortable with, and we make sure that he finishes on a good note on the side that he was comfortable with. We always go back to the last behavior that he did really well. That's how we develop confidence. Anytime with horses that we get a huge response and a reaction to something that we ask of them, and it is not the desired response and action, we're going to take a few steps backwards. And so Seth puts him back on the side that he's comfortable with walking over, and it takes this colt a little bit of time before he goes back over it again, and before he gets comfortable and confident to do it again. So we have to kind of down-regulate him mentally and emotionally here, and Seth just waits again. He goes back to that focused demeanor where he waits patiently for this colt to make a good decision. And it doesn't help that this colt is really fighting flies today. And of course, he doesn't fly spray, so it's not like I can go help him and spray him with fly spray right now. He's never really been handled or brushed on or anything by a person. So he's on his own with this. And we get one step up on the bridge. It makes the sound. Seth keeps tension on the rope this time. This colt knows what's expected of him. Seth releases a tiny little bit of pressure. He gathers up more lead to get this colt up on it. And once he gets up there, Seth will wait with him and pet and rub on him while he's up there on the bridge. Now, I will link here to a video that I did several years ago when I talked about how I got a rider up on the bridge. Anytime I'm teaching a horse, when I'm in the tack trying to ride them over the bridge and I finally get them up on it, I will dismount on the bridge because that releases the pressure. Again, Seth is going to do the same thing here for this colt, but he's going to do it on the ground. He's releasing the pressure. You see the loop in the lead rope. You see him go to petting and rubbing on this colt. He takes all the pressure off of him and releases the tension, down regulates this colt, rubs him on his face. The colt, I think, is even cocking a leg there. We can zoom in and take a look at that. So we're going to call that good for the bridge work today. And now we still need to walk him back to his pen. Seth is going to finish up by walking him over to this corral over here and practice walking him in and out of the corral. Now, I know that doesn't sound like that big of a deal to folks who raise their colts inside a barn or inside pens, but if they're raised out in big pastures, they don't know how to walk through a gate, and it can be a scary ordeal to them. So it is a big deal to be able to walk in and out of this gate. And you want to talk about distraction. Take a look at that big distraction in the background. That's a haystack there. That's a stack of square bales that I bought, and we had to tarp them, and that is a great big plastic tarp that really gets to whipping when the wind blows here. And so the horses really have to get used to something like that when that's really blowing and going, okay? So we take them in and out of the pen a couple of times, no big deal. They can get really claustrophobic walking through gates like this, so it's really important that they can do these really basic behaviors like this. Seth will finish up for the day working on some really big confidence building exercises, doing what this colt already knows how to do, walking him through the little obstacle course. Now, these are a piece of cake compared to walking over that bridge, but make sure he secures the foundation that he has already put into this colt, walking him around this little obstacle course, changing directions, moving his shoulders back and forth, and following him. Now, I follow them back up the hill towards his pen, and so does Rocky, and it's really important to me that they have this dog follow him the entire way. As long as this horse is owned by me, there will always be dogs around. He will always ride with dogs. He will always ride out with dogs, and a dog will always travel with him. He has to be okay with it at all times, whether he's going to go be a barrel horse or a rope horse or a ranch horse. There will always be a dog in his life, and he has to be perfectly okay with all of these sorts of different distractions along the way. As we head back up to his pen, I really like how this colt is not rushing to get back to his friends. He's not buddy sour and he's not pen sour. In a few short sessions, we're going to show you guys how Seth deals with a colt that's kind of rushing to get back to his friends. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for the next episode where Seth simulates tying this colt to the tie rail and how he handles when this colt has some resistance and wants to sit back. I sure appreciate you guys sticking around. I sure appreciate you spending your time with me and watching my videos. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.